Hey, good morning, everybody. It is a brutally hot Tuesday morning here in the Northeast. Still here in Jersey. It's just, man, like, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. The windows are sweating. That's crazy. So again, please, if you're in the Northeast, I'm gonna be out there today in the city, helping out with the polls, helping out the polls with the voting. But if you're in the area, please be careful. Stay hydrated, stay cool, and just if you can help it, stay out of the way. And I'm dressed a little bit unprofessional today. I'm unemployed, so it doesn't matter, I guess. But B, it's just that hot, and the AC is just running nonstop. Gonna have to probably turn that off for a little bit because that thing is gonna just overdo itself, right? So, you know, they keep saying that we're having a population crisis right now. Especially the Western world, right? The Western world is just having less and less kids. What is it like? Went from 2 point something per woman, children per woman, to like 1.6, 1.7, and that's just dropping. And if you look at countries like Japan and South Korea, it's even worse. Those cultures are also so like unique that it's kind of sad to see what's happening. And I don't know what's the solution for those countries. I think like South Korea, at least, I don't know about Japan, but South Korea is starting to implement a little bit more immigration from other parts of Asia. So they're starting, like, I think a lot of they're starting to have a more Filipino population growth, right? So, or they're bringing in more Filipino folk, and then maybe there's some other ones as well. But yeah, it's just interesting to see what's happening there. Also kind of sad. So I mean, but I guess the real discussion is, like, they want us to have kids, but what are they bringing to the table for us to want to have children, right? I don't know if they're understanding this topic. They discuss the problems, but there's no solutions in discussion. Which, I mean, I guess I'm gonna have to reiterate a little bit, but we can talk about some solutions here. I'm trying to keep these videos like to 10 minutes now, instead of blabbering on. So first, we want to look at the history. Post World War II, baby boom was like pretty much a national movement at that point, right? At post-war, the country needed to bounce back, so they needed babies. You had tax incentives. You had the development of the suburbs, right? The suburban sprawl, as I call it, but the suburban expansion, as they like to call it. And then the introduction of incentives like the GI Bill. So folks came back from war, and it's like, all right, like, just start breeding, start working, since now we got something out of this war, and start breeding. It's crazy because, like, that was the 1950s, and then literally in the 1970s to 80s, you saw stagflation, and another recession hit at that point. So another war, right? And Vietnam War, totally different outcome, right? Totally different perspective. We went from like saving the world to like messing it up, I guess, in the eyes of the American people. And feel bad for Vietnam vets, man. They got a bad rap. They got a shitty deal. But yeah, so, and then we look at something recently as 2008, right? Where late Gen X, early millennials were one of the first impacted. They were, just getting out of I guess, yeah, around that time I was 18, 19. So they were just getting out of college, just finding their first jobs, and then they get hit with this 2008 recession caused by the housing market crash and then the stock crash. Um, so, the generations who came up after them were hit even harder, pretty much, in the sense of like, well, they saw what's going on, right? They saw what's going on, um, and they weren't leaving much for their kids. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But we want to kind of look at like wage stagnation, housing price. Well, first housing prices dipped a little bit, but then they just bounced back real fast. So 2008 to 2010 we saw the dip, and then 11, 12, 13 they started bouncing back. Interest rates were still very low at that time, right? So they kept them low for a while post 2008, and then wage stagnation and debt were, sorry, I'm getting a call. Wage stagnation and student loan debt were still skyrocketing at that time. So we also have a healthcare, childcare, cost of living crisis that's kind of spurred up since then. And then Gen Z, the new generations, what they're seeing is they're seeing the rig system. I think is pretty much what's going on. They're seeing the rig system, and they don't want to take part in what's going on with that. So you're looking at all these different reasons, and then we'll go a little bit more into it, of course, of why the global birth rate is collapsing. Wealthy nations again are being hit the hardest. Education probably has a lot to do with that too, I'm guessing, and just like sheer volume of people. Country with more people is just going to have more kids. It's just statistics, right? But they're also showing signs of, like, in countries like the only one I can think about, India, from a biased standpoint, I guess, because my family's from North India, is also, they're starting to get more educated. They're also projected to have a birth rate decline at some point. Financial instability, lack of support systems, climate issues, prioritization of careers. I mean, maybe even not saying that this is, not saying there's anything wrong with this, of course, but the competition, it changed, right? With the labor market, and then women and men were competing with each other in the labor market now. So that probably has a lot to do with it, to a certain degree. But yeah, and then there's an ethical dilemma, right? Kids can cost anywhere from $250K to $100 to $500,000 to raise in the U.S., right, from age 0 to 18. And actually nowadays it's even further than that. No 18-year-olds just leaving the nest, right, with how bad things are. Again, like climate issues, wars, political instability, political unrest, job insecurity, and how capitalism plays a part in that is a big factor. So, I mean, you can go on and on and on. There's so many articles, there's so many videos about the birth rate decline and why it's happening. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's clear as day. If you can't fix this system that we have developed for our kids now, they're not going to want to bring other kids into the world in the future, right? The juice just isn't worth the squeeze for them. And it's going to affect a lot of things, and it's going to affect anywhere from the economy to social security issues coming up later. Who's going to take care of us, this generation, as we get older, if they're not replacing them with young workers? AI maybe at this point. I guess we'll see. Personally, I'm not planning on having any children. We're not planning on having any children, me and my wife. So that's out of the picture. And another way that I look at this, having gone through, since I got out of the service, man, just crappy, shitty jobs, terrible people to work with. The last two jobs have been actually pretty good. My last layoff was they gave me a really good head notice and all that stuff. They did a good job. So I'm not saying they were all bad. Some of them were great. Some of them were temporary, so I couldn't do them too long. But yeah, man, it's just mentally, financially, everything was such a struggle for me, and I'm like, why would I want to bring a kid into this world, right? To go through that, and why would I put myself through that as well, right? So work is control, right? Work is control in the sense of like, I had a boss once tell me, because at the time we were having a hard time hiring, already past 10 minutes, we had a hard time hiring young people, right? Anybody under the age of, I was the youngest guy there, and I was hitting in my 30s, and 35 now, so this is almost 5 years ago, and we were having a hard time hiring anybody under the age of 35. I was the only one. I think there's one more guy, but I asked the boss, I'm like, hey man, you every time we hire young guys, he just quits, and they're quitting in the worst ways too, just not showing up, dropping their equipment off in the morning, right? We find it at the door. Not saying that's right or wrong. And the guy, and my manager, my boss, was just like, he's like, yeah, what do you want me to tell you, man? He's like, I'd rather hire the married guy than the single guy. I don't know. The discussion kind of ended up this way. And for a while, I'm like, in naivety for the first few seconds, minutes, I was like, oh, okay, that's, yeah, kind of got to give the married guy a chance, right? Because he has more to lose in the situation. But then I'm like, nah, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is the married guy is his workhorse. The married guy can't just up and leave and quit, right? He has mouths to feed. He has more people to include in his healthcare, right? He has probably a more, obviously has more expenses because he has a kid, and he has more the mortgage because he has to have a bigger house. I mean, there's so many different ways. The big vehicle, the big safe vehicle that costs like now 40, 50, maybe even $60,000 to get. He's got all that and probably has it all on credit because of the way things are. So, yeah, man, that's sad. And I saw that, and I was already kind of on the fence about having kids, but when I heard that, man, it really kind of hit the nail on the head for me. To be like, nah, they're not gonna get me with that. They're not gonna get me with that, man. That scam at this point, right? So, work control, like them being able to control you because you have children is a big factor in my decision. I'm a free spirit, man, so it's just not gonna work for me. And yeah, want to call me selfish? Go ahead. Sure. I mean, that's the argument nowadays, right? Both sides calling each other selfish. There's nothing wrong with people who want to have children. And I'm just saying, from my perspective, I don't want to deal with this. If you're in a situation where you don't have to deal with this, even better, right? Or even better for you where you don't have to be controlled. So that's great. And I guess another thing is like just how when people have children, their expectations are pretty high about this kid that they're going to have. And it's like, well, statistically speaking, I hate to say it, man, but your kid's going to be average and probably working just like you, if not worse. You know, if that's the way things are going, maybe better if things get better. But they're going to be competing with other kids in a world where AI and computers are taking over, as long as the system remains the way it is now. So that's scary to think about. That your kids will have to go through that. And then it's also like you got to kind of bring your mindset down. Like, your kids are not going to be any sort of exception. They're not going to be the 1 out of a million, right? I mean, it's just statistically impossible the way the system works anyway. Any of us 1 out of a million, there's one of us out of a million who's doing pretty good, really good. 1 out of maybe even, I'll say, a million. No, did I say a million? Yeah, 1 out of a 500,000. I don't know, but yeah, it's for the most of us, man. It's just an average life. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think parents right now should remember that and try to do their best with what they can, right? But as far as like, last few things to kind of conclude on, the system needs to change, man. If you want us to start popping babies, right? Trump's trying to offer us $5,000 for a baby, to bring a baby into the world. What's that gonna do? You know, the people probably agreeing with that are the ones that are still saying that Johnny's living off his $1,400 stimulus check he got in 2020, 2021. the 2 or 3 Czechsy guy, still living off of that, right? So the $5,000 is gonna do jack shit for us and not a good incentive. And a lot of articles also show that it's not working, right? Make things more affordable. Honestly, at this point, it's not gonna work under this super capitalism system we have, which some people say is end stage capitalism, evolving into whatever it's going to evolve into next. But it's not going to work under the system. You need to develop something a little bit more socially, I don't want to say socialist, a little bit more on the democratic socialist side, right? We are a socialist, democratic, socialist republic, right? Yeah. So if that's how we're supposed to run, then we need to have more safety nets, not take them away, like this administration is doing. That's not going to give anybody, the incentive to have kids. You might have a few people pop in like, oh, $5,000, I'll take it. Like some of the dum-dums who don't know anything about money and don't know anything, like, $5,000 is probably a big deal for them, maybe. But, I don't know, that shouldn't say that, that's kind of mean. But yeah, it's not enough, right? We need to change the system, and I think it kind of goes with like, the states need to kind of start acting a little bit more on this, and the states need to kind of act like how some of our European countries act. Because in my mind, the United States is kind of like the EU, where like each state is like an EU country, where even I think GDP wise and economically speaking, we have similar economies. One state in the U.S. probably has a similar economy as one country in Europe, a smaller country, but they have better safety nets, right? But even them, they're not having kids either. So there's a bigger problem here. There's a social problem here, I think, as well. Norway, Denmark, all these great programs they have, and they're still not having children either. But yeah, they want us to have kids. They need to change the system. If you want to have kids, that's great. Please move forward, and thinking about their future as well, and voting now so that you have a better future for your kids, right? And if you don't want to have kids, great, you're in my camp. And yeah, that's all I have to say about today. I'll try to make some video in New York, and maybe I'll upload it while we're out there polling for Mamdani. Hope he wins, man. Como's a shitbag. Alright guys, bye.